Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our NFL Week 1 preview between the Houston Texans and the San Diego Chargers. Now let's take a look at some keys to victory for both teams, starting with the Texans.
The Houston Texans seem like the forgotten team in the NFL. Here's a team that can run the ball, play excellent defense and special teams, and they've improved in the offseason. Now versus San Diego, I can see them coming out and establishing multiplicity on offense early, different formations, personnel groupings, but still sticking with their core philosophy of running with Arian Foster and operating off play action and completing passes downfield to Andre Johnson. The new wrinkle in this offense will be the incorporation of first-round pick DeAndre Hopkins and how well he does, taking some of the pressure off Johnston in that passing game. Defensively, J.J. Watt made a case last season for being the best defensive player in the game, and this week they'll have to continue to move him around that defensive front to frustrate the Chargers' offensive line. The linebackers and secondary will get tested this week by a Chargers passing attack that can really spread the field. Let's move over to San Diego in this ballgame. The Chargers have an excellent chance to be successful this season. They'll be much improved up front along that offensive line, which in turn would just make life easier for both Phillip Rivers and that running game. This week versus the Texans, I would find ways to get Danny Woodhead more involved in the draw game as well as in the screen game. I think that's a matchup they can exploit this week versus Houston. And defensively, they weren't bad at all last season. I actually like what they have on that side of the ball. Their defensive line is very underrated, and look for outside linebackers Dwight Freeney and Jared Johnson to play a huge role in this game. Another key point in this matchup will be free safety Eric Weddle, who can't get caught looking in the backfield and has to be able to get over top of Andre Johnson when the Texans run those play action passes. So let's go inside the lab to take a look at some X's and O's for both teams in this matchup.
In order for the Houston Texans to have some success versus the San Diego Chargers, they're going to have to read patterns on the fly and communicate in the secondary. I'm going to show you what the Chargers like to do. They like to expand your defense and widen out your zone and coverage responsibilities. And this is your basic 5 under coverage set: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys underneath covering with 2 guys back deep in your safety. So Chargers will run, let's say, just a curl, send the back out in the flat. Tight end is flexed a little bit. His job is to run a 12-yard square in. We're going to bring the slot guy on a crosser, and we're going to have this guy run a basic short 10-yard, 5-yard in route. Now, for coverage reading purposes or pattern reading purposes, you got to number these guys from strong side to weak. So this would be 1, this would be 2, this would be your 3, this would be your 4, and this would be your 5. So that way they can communicate with each other, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that way guys can understand what's going on. Now, the basic rule is that this guy right here, he has to be slow to play this curl or get underneath this curl. Why? Because 3 may be beating this backer here, this linebacker here, so they're going to need his help. So he has to slow play this, keep an eye on the crosser while also keep an eye on his responsibility. This is an important defender here, weak side. Now, your basic responsibilities here, your cornerback on the strong side has to get that bump and drop back into his cushion. If no one is threatening deep, close in on this in route. So that's covered. Next, you have this guy right here who has a tough responsibility. His job is to make sure he gets his depth and also close to the final number 2, which would be this crosser. So this guy has to close in on here. It's difficult to do, but he has to be an athlete to make it happen. Now the backer, his job on this side is to wall off this in route and then close on number 3. So he's walling it off, squeezing that that square in route, and closing in on number 3, chasing that crosser. Now when you move to this backer, his job, the weak side corner, his job is to get that bump as usual, cushion off, no deep threat, close in on the curl. That's huge. Now we have the strong side back here, the weak side back here. His job is to close in on a curl, just to check 4. If 4 gets out here, he has to fly up there. And if 4 gets here, he has to fly up there and cover 4. Otherwise, if it gets outside of this receiver, then it's the cornerback's job to get to 4, while his job is to read and get underneath this curl. So you see where his responsibility is dual. He has to make sure he gets under 5, check 4, and if he gets close, they'll adjust. Cornerback will take the flat. He'll get underneath this curl because we have the weak side safety also closing in on the curl if there's no deep threat. Strong side guy, if there's no deep threat, you close in on that square in. So it can get confusing, but that's why I said communication is key in the secondary. That's why you utilize the number system so guys can know where their responsibilities are and you're passing guys off in coverage. And I think that's how the Texans can have a lot of success versus San Diego. One of the staples of the Texans running game is the split zone, where they will line up in an I formation, giving the illusion of a strong side ISO, power play, gap play, or even a tall sweep, but they'll send the fullback weak side. And if the Chargers are going to have any success, they're going to have to stop this run play. I'm going to get out the way and explain what this play is all about and how they can stop it. You see right here, this is the split zone. They're going to send the fullback weak side, and they're going to run their traditional zone like they always do. And you see right here, this backer, his job is to spill the fullback. So he has to take that inside shoulder all out and force the fullback to spill outside, so that way he can come in, close down, flat line, and make the tackle in the backfield. The tackle right here has to maintain the B gap. That's his job, maintain the B gap, and that way they can have a chance. You look at the Mike backer right here, his job is to attack and maintain the B gap, hitting with that inside shoulder. Everybody wants to take the inside shoulder approach so that way they can play better football. Your weak side backer will attack the A gap. That's his job right here. The nose, his job is to make sure he maintains his center, doesn't allow the center to push him back into the depth of the linebackers. The free safety fills where needed. The rover, strong safety, will fill that gap right there, so that way the cutback, he's the cutback defender, obviously. And the corners will have to play the fence technique, where they're going to have to fence inside, hold these guys at the line of scrimmage. We didn't draw them on the board, but hold those guys at the line of scrimmage and read where the running back is going. So that's how they can have some success defending the split zone. If they can't defend this split zone play, the Texans are going to rush for a lot of yards. So field defender, backside defender, responsible for the cutback. These two guys are really responsible for making the play, taking that wrong shoulder approach, and they're going to have to stop this run early and often in this ball game.
Now, here are some coaching points for both teams in this matchup. For the Texans, you want to utilize those backs in the passing game. That's Ben Tate, Arian Foster, the fullback, Greg Jones. Get everyone involved in the passing game. You know San Diego will come in, try to load up, stop the run, give these guys the element of misdirection by getting those backs out there in a screen game. And I will go nonstop pressure versus Phillip Rivers. He's a guy that won't elude you in the pocket, so you can get aggressive in your pressure packages and get him on the ground. And you have to be able to identify and adjust to the personnel groupings that the Chargers bring to the table. This is a team that loves to flex out their tight end. You have to be able to identify and line up properly, otherwise they can hit big plays deep down the field. Now, for the Chargers in this game, you have to be able to set the edge defensively. That goes without saying when you're facing a team that can run the zone like the Texans can run it. You got to be able to set the edge, force everything tackle to tackle, so that way you can make plays downhill. And you have to own the hashes and the seams on offense. You do a great job with your talent getting these guys down the middle of the field, whether it be tight ends or bigger wide receivers. You have to own that versus Houston, and protection prevails. If you can keep Phillip Rivers well protected in the pocket, and if they can open up holes in the running game for Ryan Matthews, it just aids in their chances of winning this ball game at home. The X factor for the Texans, not only in this game, but for the rest of the 2013 season, will be the passing game. We know they have Andre Johnson. We know they can run the football with the best of them. We know they can play excellent defense. But can they develop a number 2 and number 3 wide receiver? Can they get those tight ends involved in the passing game early? If they can do that, this will be a dangerous football team moving forward. The X factor for the Chargers will be their pass protection. When you're facing a team like the Houston Texans with a guy like J.J. Watt, Brian Cushing, and also a guy that can come off the edge like Brooks Reed, you have to be able to protect up front. Otherwise, anything you want to do offensively, you won't be able to do consistently throughout the course of the ball game. I like the Texans in this ball game. This one will be won by their defense. They match up very well versus the Chargers' passing attack, and I believe that will allow them to be much more aggressive in their pressure packages. Now, defensively, San Diego will be able to compete, but their offense will struggle with consistency versus the Texans' front seven. And I want to give a huge shout out to Texans fan forums and Charger fan forums for always showing football game plan support.